Picture this. World War II is over. The world has two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, and they've just entered this massive competition. But this wasn't a war with soldiers and tanks. Oh no, this was a race to prove who was best. And the finish line was literally out of this world. So how did this whole epic rivalry even get started? Well, it all came down to two totally different ideas about how a country should be run. And that tension, that need to prove my way is better, pushed science and technology to their absolute limits. We call this period the Cold War. And it's called cold because the two sides never actually had a direct, all-out war with each other. Instead, they competed in other ways, like building smarter technology and making bigger scientific discoveries. The goal was to show the world which system was superior. And the ultimate prize? Space. But this whole global contest, it didn't start with some big explosion. It started with a sound, a simple electronic pulse broadcast from the darkness of space that would change everything. That little beeping sound came as a complete shock to pretty much everyone on Earth, and it sent this huge wave of anxiety rippling across the globe, especially in the United States. So get this. On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union, in total secrecy, launched a massive rocket, and on top of it was the first man-made object ever to orbit the Earth. Because they kept it a secret, they completely caught their American rivals off guard. They called it Sputnik. In Russian, the name means fellow traveler. And suddenly, our planet had this new artificial companion, circling the globe over and over, beeping down to remind the entire world what the Soviet Union had just accomplished. And Sputnik wasn't some tiny little thing either. It weighed a whopping 184 pounds. That was way heavier than anything the Americans were even dreaming of building at the time. Its size alone was a clear signal of just how powerful Soviet rockets were. If you're trying to picture it, just think of a beach ball. A polished metal sphere, about that size, was now humanity's very first outpost in space, sending its simple signal down to anyone on Earth with a radio. Back in America, the reaction was immediate panic. Newspapers ran these super dramatic headlines calling Sputnik a red moon, directly connecting the Soviet satellite to the threat of communism. Suddenly, the night sky didn't feel so friendly anymore. This massive wave of fear became known as the Sputnik Shock. Americans were suddenly terrified. The thinking was, wait a minute, if they can put a satellite up there, what's stopping them from putting a bomb up there? It felt like the US had just been knocked off its pedestal as the world's technology leader. Space was now a potential battlefield. Okay, so America was stunned, for sure, but they were also determined. The Sputnik Shock kicked off this gigantic, nationwide effort to not just catch up, but to win this new, high-stakes race to the stars. The first thing they realized was that this race really begins in the classroom. So the government started pouring money into schools to create better science and math programs. The goal was to create a whole new generation of brilliant engineers and scientists who could help America win. Next up, the U.S. had to get organized. So in 1958, the government created NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. The idea was to stop having different military branches all competing with each other. Instead, NASA would be one single, focused agency leading the charge into space. But America's first big attempt to answer Sputnik, well, it was a huge public failure. In December 1957, a rocket called Vanguard barely got off the launch pad before it just exploded in a massive fireball, and it was all happening live on TV. The media had a field day, calling it Flopnik. Ouch. But they didn't give up. Not even close. Just over a month after that humiliating explosion, a different team with a different rocket launched Explorer 1. And it worked perfectly. America was officially in the space race. And this time it was about more than just getting up there. See, Sputnik was big and heavy, and it proved that orbiting the Earth was possible. But Explorer 1, even though it was smaller, was packed with scientific instruments, and it made the first major discovery from space: huge radiation belts trapped by Earth's gravity, which we now call the Van Allen belts. America wasn't just in the race, it was doing science. Okay, so both sides have satellites in orbit. The game is on. But what's the next level? The goal just got way, way more daring, sending a person into the great unknown. Now hold on. Before you strap a person to a giant rocket, you have to answer a pretty big question.
Can a living thing even survive up there? To figure that out, both sides sent animals first. The Soviets sent a dog named Laika, and the US used chimpanzees to see how spaceflight affects a body that's pretty similar to ours. These animals were the true pioneers. And after those animal missions proved it was possible, the Soviet Union did it again. In April of 1961, a pilot named Yuri Gagarin became the first human being in history to orbit the Earth. He instantly became a global hero, and it was another massive win for the Soviets. America was behind again. So President John F. Kennedy decided to do something incredibly bold. He didn't just try to catch up, he aimed to leapfrog the competition completely. In a now famous speech, he set a new, almost impossible-sounding goal. America would land a man on the moon and bring him home safely before the decade was over. The finish line had just been moved. So this crazy, intense competition, all driven by the Cold War, what did it all lead to? Well, it turns out it changed our world in ways you might not even realize, ways that affect you every single day. Seriously, think about the technology you use all the time. The GPS in your phone that helps you get around, that came from the space race. Satellite TV, super accurate weather forecasts, even better materials for your clothes and ways to keep food fresh. All of that technology can trace its roots right back to this amazing period of innovation. And you know, maybe the most incredible part of this whole story is how it's evolved. What started as this bitter rivalry between two nations has completely transformed. Today, former rivals like the US and Russia work together every day, side by side with many other countries, on the International Space Station. So the race to the stars proves that huge competition can push humanity to do absolutely incredible things. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As we look at the challenges of today, like AI or climate change or even exploring Mars, what's going to be the next great race that pushes all of us to take our next giant leap?